Welcome back, dear listeners. The clock has stopped again, which means it's time to pay it praise. I'm a male that lives in the far northeast of the US. Every late summer I take me and my dog Spud on a 3-day hiking and camping trip. We've been doing this for about 4 years now, and always have a great time. He loves the fresh air and the room to run. We usually end up far off trails where no one is likely to stumble upon us. I prefer it to be just me and him. This time we traveled a little further to a state forest we hadn't been to before. It was beautiful, the foliage was dense and the leaves were only barely starting to change color, so the whole area was a verdant green with dotting of amber leaves. We had been hiking for a good 6 hours, and I knew it would be dark pretty soon, so I started looking for a potential spot to camp. We walked about 2 miles off the main trail before entering a clearing. The grass was beautiful, even fairly short for not having seen much human activity. Across the clearing on the far side was a large tree that I was not familiar with in the slightest. It looked almost like a white oak tree, but I know those are not really native to the area. It's just the closest thing that comes to mind. I wasn't too keen on setting up near the tree, because even from a distance I could tell that there was something weird about it. There appeared to be some fresh burn marks on the ground near it, which meant someone had likely been there before fairly recently. Light was beginning to fade fast though, and even though Spud whimpered, we settled into the low grass surrounding the massive tree. I made a small fire from some small twigs and a couple logs. We didn't need it to go all night, just enough to cook. After a meal of canned stew, a couple shots of whiskey while waiting for the stew to heat, and a can of chopped prime rib dog food for Spud that he just adores, we settled into my jumbo sleeping bag. He likes to lay on top of it, so I bring a warm blanket to cover him up as well. He paced back and forth for a while, whimpering before settling down for the night. I woke up at probably close to 3 a.m. with Spud whining and barking. The only light at this point was coming from the moon, dimly shining through the thick clouds, so I reached into my sleeping bag to grab my flashlight. After a couple of clicks, of course it was dead, despite me having replaced the batteries before the trip. Just then the whole ground started to rumble. Having never been in an earthquake before, I'm not sure if that description does it justice. I called Spud over to me and held onto his collar, because without adequate light, I was at the mercy of whatever was producing that sound. There was a loud creaking and moaning, and what sounded like large branches snapping as me and Spud both huddled together, scared senseless. It seemed like that noise was moving away from us and not towards us. Within about 30 minutes, the sound had almost completely stopped. I lay there for probably another hour before I finally fell asleep exhausted from the long hike the day before and the nervous breakdown I nearly just had. As soon as the sunlight touched my face, I sprang awake, looking around. Spud crawled out from under his blanket. As I stood and surveyed the area, something became immediately clear. The large tree was gone. There was no large hole, no branches laying around, not even leaves cluttering the ground. It's as if it had never even been there in the first place. That was it. Either I was losing my mind or a huge tree just walked away in the middle of the night. I packed a few things that I brought, whistled for Spud, and we cut our camping trip a day short. I will never return to that forest again. I'm almost afraid to even camp now without a large group, and I will never hike in the evening. Oh, how joyous! It seems like the clock was pleased with the story. It started again. Sweet dreams, everyone.